Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that further proceedings on the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant-at-Arms bring in the absent members.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion does prevail. The Secretary will close the roll. Members, please stand for the prayer. Today's chaplain is Reverend Eileen Blanche from the International House of Prayer in Rochester. And following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this great and beautiful day that you've given to us, and for this opportunity that we can all just pause for a moment and just let go of our agendas and just turn our eyes on you. Thank you that we can always do that, God, and that you're always watching over us and that you always love us. Father, I ask that you would come now and that you would move in the Senate. I ask, Lord, that you would touch every person here. Father, I pray that during this time where we're thinking about you, that you would just come and you would bring refreshing, that you would bring peace, that you would help us to just let go of our agendas, that we could sit back and have confidence that you love us, that you're watching over us, that you're leading and that you're guiding us, God. Lord, you gave us a command in your word to pray, first of all, for those in authority, for those who are governing, God, so that we may live peaceable and godly lives. So, Lord, as I stand here today and I intercede for all of these amazing people, your children in this house, I just ask, God, that you would download your heart, that you would download your thoughts, that you would give them wisdom, uncanny, God, that you would help them to let their light so shine as they represent you and as they represent those, Lord, in their homes, the people that they love, the people that voted them into office, God, that they would represent them well. I ask, Lord, that you would bless us in this moment. I also ask, God, that you would rain down prosperity over the Senate, that they would be rich and fat and full of your glory, that they would have more than enough to take care of themselves and their family and the state of Minnesota. I ask, Lord, that you would remind them every day to check in with you, to pause just for a moment and say, God, help. Give them strength, Lord, to stand for what's righteous and holy in your sight. And Lord, when we mess up, I ask that you forgive us and clean it up for us, and that we always be reminded that we're just little children, but we have a great big God who's watching over us. And so now, Lord, let it be your thoughts, let it be your ways, let it be the very essence of your being. May we represent you well as we serve you and we serve the state of Minnesota. We ask for your guidance and that you would govern through us. In the name of Jesus, I thank you that you are always here, that you always hear our prayer, that you never leave us, you never forsake us. And so now we consider it done. Amen.
The Secretary will take the roll.
Senators Abler, Anderson, Bach, Benson, Bigham, Carlson, Chamberlain, Champion, Clausen, Coleman, Swazinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Duckworth, Dietzick, Eaton, Eichhorn, Eakin, Fateh, Fateh, Gazelka, Gaggenher, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson, Stewart, Kent, Kiffmeyer, Klein, Coran, Kunish, Lang, Latz, Limmer, Lopez, Franzen, Marty, Matthews, McEwen, Miller, Murphy, Nelson, Newman, Newton, Osmic, Pappas, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rest, Rosen, Rude, Senjum, Thomasoni, Torres, Ray, Utke, Weber, Westrom, Uyghur, Wickland.
Pursuant to Rule 14.1, the following members intend to vote under Rule 40.7. Senators Chamberlain, Dietzick, Eaton, Eakin, Fateh, Gazelka, Housley, Isaacson, Johnson, Latz, Limmer, Newton, Rosen, Tomasoni, and Torres Ray. A quorum is present. Senators, for your information, there is also an addendum for today. Starting with the second order of business, executive and official communications. The following communication was received. Please make note, no action is required. Moving to the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 3472 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee so adopted. Senate File Number 3472, a bill for enacting the state government extending the operation of the Minnesota Premium Security Plan. Senate File Number 3472 is herewith returned to the Senate. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
No action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House files herewith transmitted. House File Numbers 3216, 3545, 4406, and 3217. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
No action is required. We move to the fourth order of business, first reading of House bills. The House bills are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Moving to the fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee reports printed in the agenda and the addendum be adopted.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion does prevail. Members, there's one exception to the reports that are adopted. It's Senate File 2307. That is not part of the adoption motion. It was a late bill, so it is not part of this adoption. Moving to the sixth order of business, second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file numbers 4357, 3329, 3501, 4318, and 3920.
The Senate files are given their second reading. Moving to the seventh order of business, second reading of House files. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House file number 3254.
Second reading. Moving to the eighth order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills in today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Moving to the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motions as one motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion does prevail. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File 4212, number 88 on general orders, be stricken and re-referred to the Committee on State Government, Finance, and Policy.
Senator Jasinski, that is your bill, and you have permission of the chairs?
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my bill, and I have talked to Senator Kiffmeyer, and she does know. Thank you.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion does prevail. Senator Utke.
Fellow Democrats. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File 4214, number 86 on general orders, be stricken and re-referred to the Committee on State Government, Finance, and Policy and Elections.
Senator Utke, that is your bill, and you have permission from the chairs involved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, it is my bill, and yes, I do have, and it missed a step, and we need to go back and do that. So thank you.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion does prevail. Senator motion, remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Miller.
Mr. President, are we moving to the 13th order of business?
I had it highlighted for motions and resolutions. If you have none, we will move to the 13th order of business.
I have nothing further that I'm aware of.
Moving to the 13th order of business, announcements of Senate interest. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Yesterday, we celebrated the life of the former Secretary of the Senate, Patrick Flavin. It was, as you would expect, an Irish Catholic wake in the very best way. But I knew Patrick and Maureen as neighbors, as friends, and as mentors. And so for today, in memory of Patrick, I would like to use the words of Mr. George Bernard Shaw. This is the true joy of life, the being used up for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the community, and as long as I live it, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I have got a hold of for a moment, and I want to make sure it burns brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. I am certain that Patrick's wife, Maureen, greeted Patrick at the gates, her eyes full of joy, her bright smile, and a to-do list of the things necessary to shape the place up. Sláinte, faithful warrior, Patrick Flavin. Thank you.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to share some memories of Secretary Flavin as well. Thank you, Senator Murphy, for kicking us off. Only a few of us now, I think, served with him. He retired in 2009. He started service in this chamber in 1973, so he was both the youngest at the time and then at his retirement the longest serving parliamentarian secretary of a chamber like this in state government. My memory of him and the overwhelming sense of the remembrances yesterday at Union Depot were that he was very, very highly respected. He was highly regarded as a parliamentarian who was very even-keeled, very level-headed, lent a very calm demeanor. Colleen knows, she served for a long time with him, Mike as well. As raucous as this chamber gets, which is nothing compared to the other chamber, but once in a while it gets a little roller coaster-y in here. He was always very calm. And Roger Moe, who was the longtime majority leader, remembered how he would try to get favorable rulings and favorable advice whispered into the ear of the president, and Pat Flavin simply would not shape or shade his advice for those rulings to favor one party over the other. If the presence of his former staff is any evidence, and some of the remembrances from them, he was very, very warmly regarded by his staff as well, which I think is great testimony to his demeanor. I remember him personally as so kind, so dignified, and lent such an air of the culture that we value and highly regard in this institution. I know that he was nationally renowned. He served as the head of the parliamentary professional associations. He served on the Masons Manual Committee. He gave advice as well internationally to other parliaments around the world. So he was just an exemplar of public service, of long standing, and he will be missed, and our state is a better place for Pat Flavin and his service. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Uyghur.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. I first met Patrick Flavin in 1973 when I was an intern here. And the internship was with Senator Jerry Hughes, who was the education chair and the president of the Minnesota Senate. Obviously, as you know, Mr. President and Secretary Ludeman, there is a very close relationship. You're a lifeline as the Secretary of the Senate and with the President, and so I would often see meetings between Senator Hughes and Patrick Flavin as an intern. What I quickly learned was Patrick Flavin was polished, professional, personable, always prepared. And he had a great partnership also with the community and with his spouse, Maureen. I might add as well, clearly the best dressed Secretary of Senate that you could have ever seen, and you do well, Secretary Ludeman, but he was just a splendor of tonsorial, impeccable taste at the desk. And he often, too, in these interesting conversations between the Secretary and the President, he would at least create the perception that he's selling that call, if it was germane or not germane, and would cite and Masons, whatever, as to the reasoning. And he took a great deal of pride in that. I mentioned the partnership of Patrick Flavin, and that with his spouse, Maureen. And Maureen also was a public servant, and I so much remember her leadership in Celebrate Minnesota, which provided, through the Perpich administration, a number of projects throughout Minnesota to provide additional celebration of great things happening and some additional matching grants that could be provided. It was so competitive, the great deal of pride that went into that. So the Secretary Flavin and the partnership he had with Maureen, the partnership that he had with this community, and also I'll always be thankful, Patrick Flavin, for getting to know you at an early age and obviously making a very big impression on me as I further charted what I wanted to do with my life. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first met Patrick Flavin when I entered this chamber in 2001, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He held up this book, and he held up the Senate rules, and he said, "Learn these rules. Learn these rules, and you will be a credit to the Senate, to your district, and to your colleagues." And the President, I think, the current President will appreciate this, as well as the Secretary. Sorry, that's my phone. When the President has made a ruling, be very sure of your grounds if you're going to challenge it. Very sure of your grounds if you're going to challenge it, and you do that by knowing the rules. And that is advice, I think, that is worn well in this chamber. I've had the privilege, when Senator Pappas was the president, to serve as Senate President Pro Tem. And I remembered greatly trying to make the fairest rulings possible so that they would not be challenged, not only by the opposite party, but by members of my own party. So that is, it's not always a partisan challenge, by the way. But I think that is the fondest memory I have of him. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like Senator Uyghur, I knew Pat Flavin for a very, very long time. He was Irish Catholic in the days that was kind of a dominance force here at the Capitol. And he was certainly very familiar and friendly with the priest at St. Paul Cathedral, who he could call at a moment's notice to come down and do the prayer for the day. He was very big. I have just a few funny stories. All the wonderful things people said about him I agree with and are true, but I have a few funny stories. So he was very big on tradition, and there was a tradition that the Senate secretary would take all the newbies out to lunch at the St. Paul Hotel, which was pretty cool to do. That was fun. But one thing where tradition kind of caught up with us, we had a little bit of a conflict in which I said, why is it that we only order stationery? Why don't we order note cards like we did in the House? Well, you can't say that about the House, right, over in the Senate. And his response was, well, maybe we'll consider that in the future sometime, but this is the way we do it in the Senate, and Senator Pappas, you're going to have to learn the Senate culture. Thank you, Pat Flavin, for teaching me the Senate culture.
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's fun to reminisce about frankly, an incredible person, at least from the standpoint of a new senator that arrived here in 2003 and walked around this room and read the inscriptions and wondered what I'm doing here. You go out and campaign, knock on doors, walk through alleys, and so on and so forth. Get doors slammed on you, and all of a sudden you're here, and you think about this place, and again you revel in the idea of all the people that came before you. But that is just to say that as you walked in here, as I walked in here, I remember, if you will, I don't know if they call it freshman orientation or whatever it was. My first, I think, visit into the chamber, there was Pat Flavin, and Pat absolutely made you feel welcome. I think I could say that for any of us that were there in that orientation in 2003. And again, we're wondering where we were and what this was all really about. From that day forward, you could walk in this chamber and Pat would always make you feel welcome. As I remember, a minority leader, of course, you get more engaged in the Secretary of the Senate as you get more responsibility and so on and so forth. But there too, he was always there to be supportive and to offer certainly advice, if not information, about certain sequences that might be happening on a certain day. But he was always there, always welcoming, always smiling as you walk down this aisle. He would be standing at the rostrum there and always had a smile for you. Just a terribly welcoming man. And Senator Rest, I'm thinking about rules, and I suppose he gave me a rule book. I don't know. We all have them. I was thinking about Pat Flavin on a certain night here when Senator Day went across up and down the aisles picking up rule books because we didn't use them anyway, and he deposited them on Senator Johnson's desk. I would have loved to see what Pat Flavin's expressions were on his face that night, because it was one of those nights. And oh my gosh, he must have been just absolutely horrified at what was going on, but because he did respect this place so much, and with that respect, I think he carried it to us. I mean, I think we all learned to respect and honor this place a little bit more because Pat Flavin taught us. And so today, as we think about him in a special way, I just remember a man that's kind and gentle, a man that dignified, if you will, the Senate, and certainly taught us all, at least as we came into this chamber, what it is, what it's about, and how we ought to act. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to just add a couple of things to what others have said. Don't need to repeat them, but when Patrick Flavin came here to the Senate, it was the time when legislatures nationally were, quote, professionalizing, where they were hiring year-round research staff and committee staff and so on. And so he was in charge at the time the Senate was growing much more. And I think the thing that I heard from people back then, and I think we still see, is he did it in a very wonderful way, where we expect and trust that Senate administration is going to be a nonpartisan thing. He and all secretaries of the Senate have been people who we know their partisanship background, but we also understand that they've got a different role. And I think he set some good traditions for us all that we keep. Also want to say that when, as Senator Rest and others point out, Mason's manual, he didn't just know the book, he literally helped rewrite the book. He was the chair of the committee that did it, and I think the most recent version, he's the first person they pay tribute to in the book. But he knew the rules better than I think all the rest of us combined, and I think that's been a service to us over the years that our secretaries continue that tradition. And Patrick was kind and calm, which is very helpful in a place like this where people get passionate at times. Kind, calm, helpful, and I think we owe him a lot in the Senate. And I will suggest that maybe after adjournment we have a moment of silence for him. I will ask for that, either recess or I think we're adjourning in a minute.
We'll do it after adjournment.
Anyway, Secretary Flavin was a great man, and I think those who didn't get to know him in person were benefiting from some of the legacy he left us. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And although I did not know Secretary Flavin, I have heard so much of his legacy, and wouldn't it be great that all of us who serve in this legislature can be remembered with such positive mention as this individual that has touched many lives. So I stand in solidarity with my colleagues in asking for a moment of silence after adjournment. I do want to mention another historic day today. If I may, Mr. President and members, today I want to take some time to ask us to also reflect on an important historical vote in our nation and in our state, which is the sign that this country can be a land of opportunity for all Americans. And with that, I want to recognize that the Senate will be confirming the first woman African-American in our state's and country's history. And that is just such an amazing accomplishment and such an amazing appointment. And think about that. We've had 150 justices in our country's history, and this would be the 116th Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson would be the first black woman, and it's long overdue. This vote comes 54 years to the day when Mr. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis. Judge Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court represents a piece of that, of Dr. King's legacy. It's a signal not just to young Americans, but to young African-American girls who aspire to be like her. It's an achievement that is in this country is not limited to race or ethnicity or gender or religion or by who you love. It's based on the content of your character. And Judge Brown Jackson has shown that she has the character to be on the highest court in our land. And members, I remember back in 2009 when I was glued to the screen and the confirmation hearings for Judge Sonia Sotomayor to be the first Latina woman on the highest court. And as a Puerto Rican myself and a lawyer, I was very touched by seeing that example to all women and women of color. That vote was 68 to 31. 9 Republicans voted for that confirmation. We're now in 2022, and this confirmation is long overdue, and I am rejoiced to be part of witnessing that history. Over time, we thankfully have moved ever so slowly to ensure that in this country, nothing should be beyond our reach. We're not there yet, but we're moving forward. And we have a lot of work to do on education, on healthcare, on public safety for all. And I know all of us are committed to moving forward on those issues that are so important to our constituents. I think that's why we're all here serving in the Minnesota legislature, to keep moving the state and country forward and giving hope for the future Supreme Court justices, the future engineers, the future teachers, the future computer programmers, that they can all succeed, and we need to give them the building blocks by the legislation we pass in this body. Judge Brown Jackson is certainly qualified. Her background is amazing and exemplary. She graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University. She attended Harvard Law School, where she graduated cum laude and was an editor of the Harvard Law Review. She already had been confirmed to serve on the lower courts by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee that is voting today in Washington. and she was confirmed with bipartisan support previously. She should be confirmed to the Supreme Court based on her qualifications and her character. As Minnesota's U.S. Senator from Minnesota, Senior Senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar mentions, who is a member of the Judiciary Committee, she recently stated Justice Jackson's hearing is taking place at a time when we know we can't take democracy for granted, and we must emerge from a 2-year pandemic not as 300+ million silos, but instead recommit to the idea that what unites America is stronger than what divides us. So as we are inspired by Judge Brown Jackson's elevation to the Supreme Court, and as we reflect on what it means to our country, I know that this should unite us in our work here in the Minnesota legislature. I thank you, and I want to thank, on behalf of all the legislators who are judges, who are lawyers, and who have been, keenly looking at this confirmation, and my colleagues of the Posse Caucus, in particular, Senator Champion. I know that we are very excited to see this confirmation come to life, and I hope you all enjoy this historic day as much as we are. Thank you.
Further announcements. Senator Newman.
Mr. President, thank you. I just want to announce that the Senate Transportation Committee will reconvene in room 1200 at the Minnesota Senate Office Building 15 minutes after adjournment.
Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. And I am looking at my Mason's Legislative Manual 2010 edition, and Senator Marty was absolutely right. On the dedications page, the first sentence starts out, "This edition of Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure is dedicated to the past commission chairs." First one mentioned, Patrick Flavin, Minnesota. So it's right in our Mason's manuals, members. With that, Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Tuesday, April 5th at 12 noon.
And again, members, immediately after adjournment, we'll stand for a moment of silence. To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, Senate is adjourned. Members, a moment of silence. Thank you, members.